Here we are, the beginning of March, well, after the first week of March, and coming up the steps before going into the garden, I'll just show you this amazing Hellebore. Anna's red, strutting its stuff. I think you'll agree. It's a splendid Hellebore. I do remove the leaves of these Hellebores in the late winter, early spring, because I think it's, first of all, they look rather tatty, and I think the second thing is they can carry fungal disease, which is probably not a good idea. It has very attractive foliage when it does come out eventually, after the flowers have gone. So onwards and upwards. I can hear the sound of the bumblebees in the flowers which are now opening of Pseudopanax laetus from New Zealand. But why I've come round here principally is actually to show you this Mahonia. This is Mahonia napaulensis, and as the name would suggest, from Nepal, and reputedly a bit on the tender side. However, this year it seems to be flowering really well, and turns out that it's the form with wonderful orange-yellow, very full flowers, which are really quite dramatic and large. And it is really flowering very well this year, in spite of the cold winter that we've had. Here's another Pseudopanax arboreus, the tree-like Pseudopanax. And the early flowers, as you can see, are giving sustenance to the insects that are about at this early time of year. If you're wondering where this lovely sort of vanilla spicy scent is coming from, although you can't really smell it, can you? I can. It's coming from this rather understated shrub with a very fancy name. This is Urmlaria ceraciformis. There we go. It's a suckering shrub to about 2 meters, 6.5 feet. Spreads about, but it does need a bit of cutting back when it spreads too far. But it has got this wonderful spicy vanilla aroma. And as you can see, it's dripping with its flowers. With the sound of the rill busy rilling in the background, we pass the rather sumptuous flowers of Camellia Leonard Messel. They are gorgeous, I must say. But we are actually heading for a shrub which says catkins. Look, look, look. So let's have a look. It really is absolutely festooned with catkins. Isn't it wonderful? Wonderful. This is a plant called Stachyurus, and it's in the form magpie, and magpie has variegated leaves, but they're a lovely clean variegation. So I know people aren't very keen on variegated plants, but this has some a lovely fresh variegation in the summer. But at the moment, it's catkins. Well, I want you to come with me a minute, and Bertie, obviously, because I want to show you this quite small magnolia, but it's got a very appropriate name. It's called Scented Gem, and my goodness me, it lives up to the name. I wish you could smell it. Sweet, spicy, marvellous. Doesn't form an enormous tree. This is several years old. But the other thing is, standing here, I've noticed the Buddleia in flower, so if we go through the magnolia, we'll see the Buddleia. That's a bit closer. I want you to notice the trunk of the Buddleia, and you can tell that it is really quite old, at least over 30 years old. Still going, very early flower. Pretty flower. It's called Buddleia farreri, at least that's how I've known it all these years. I think botanists argue now that it should be in amongst the Buddleia called crispa, which has got really felted grey leaves. These leaves have a bit of felt, especially on the new growth, but they aren't the sort of silver colour and furry woolly things that are on Buddleia crispa. Anyway, this is always a very early flowering Buddleia, and very welcome for that. Now just under the Buddleia we have our historic daffodil, Queen Anne's double jonquil. It dates from 1601, and we know that because the Bishop of Einstettensis had a botanic garden in the palace grounds, and in 1601 he published a book with illustrations of all the hundreds of plants in his garden, and this was one of them. The Queen Anne is not our Queen Anne Stuart, but Anne of Austria, who married King Louis XIII of France and gave birth to the Sun King, Louis XIV. So here it is, 1601, and still around. And I rather like to think that the look is a bit like the Sun King's emblem. Early flowering with a bright yellow colour is a member of the rose family called Kerria japonica. Now very often you get the double form, which I don't think is as nice as the single. This one is the single form called Golden Guinea. Welcome for its early flowering. Now spring means new growth, things bursting back into life. And here is a plant where the new growth is really extremely colourful, and it is a loquat, Japanese loquat. And when these new leaves are unfurling, if it weren't for the veining, I would have thought they could be mistaken for magnolia blossom even. It's very decorative. Unfortunately, it doesn't really flower very well in this climate here, and certainly doesn't fruit. It's a pity because I do love the fruit. And behind it is lurking a camellia reticulata seedling given to me from Marwood Hill. And I think it really is quite dramatic, even though it's just a random seedling. They get very tall. This one must be up to 12 feet in the air. Bit of a jumble, but here's the early flowering spurge, Euphorbia cairaceus, and this is a form which has quite dark eyes. It's collected in the wild, but it is a very dark-eyed form. There is one called Black Pearl or something, and in it and amongst it is the Daphne relative, Edgworthia, and this is a form with red tipped flowers called Red Dragon. Nice scent, and very bendy twigs, which actually can be tied into knots if one feels so inclined. Very flexible. What a pity the magnolias are so big now. They're flowering right at the top there, and you see that beautiful fuchsia purple magnolia, Campbellii Darjeeling, and a white Magnolia Loebneri. Certainly the birds are tweeting. Spring is certainly springing. Ooh, Bertie's chased off a pigeon.